Hi guys, welcome back to my show, A Different Life Story, with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today is another fantastic day for an interview, and I have got the honor and pleasure of meeting a fellow inmate from 7 years ago who was admitted with me to Capri Hospital on the same day and the same intake, and we were both wounded animals licking our wounds, and we were a sorry sight. And it is so beautiful to have Denise Cloughley here with me in person, beaming up from beautiful New Zealand to beautiful New Zealand. And Denise, it's so great to have you on my show.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you.
Oh no, it's beautiful. It's so amazing. Denise and I, as I said, we were admitted to Capri Hospital on the same day, and I remember us sitting there waiting to be processed and sitting around this table. And there was another girl I remember there, and we were all sort of weird, trying to find our place there, try to sort of keep it together. A roller coaster of emotions, and it was reflected in our eyes, which must have looked like deers caught in the headlights. Can you remember much of that day?
You know, just with you saying, 7 years ago, and ironically, you and I are actually talking now, as we are in life now, that much later. Yes, I can remember it, but I only remember pieces of that day. I do remember you because somebody told me that somebody else was being admitted on the same day as me. But to be honest, I was off my face. I'd been drinking all morning, and I'd flown up. I'd actually sculled the last of my water bottle at the airport before throwing up in the rubbish bin and getting in the car to go to what I hoped was my last rehab. And so, yeah, I think I knew what was coming in regards to my detox and what was coming towards me in the next few days. So I suppose, I was just in no man's land. I was just, thank God I'm here, but what next? And I suppose just really, really, it scared's not because I knew what was coming, but, God, what have I done? What have I actually done? I've let my bottle go, and now for 28 days I can't get to it.
Exactly.
So, crazy, isn't it? Crazy is what it seems, that one of your first thoughts in the first few days of being in a rehab is, what the hell have I done?
Exactly right. And I guess most of us go through that, isn't it? But you had a bit of a head start there because this was not your first rodeo. And indeed, I have had the pleasure of reading your book. Now, I know you've got a copy there. Show it to us. Come on.
Here's a copy.
That's it here. Put me a glass of life. Guys, this is beautiful reading. This is Denise's story. And it filled in some of the blanks that I didn't know about you. I remember you saying you were commenting about previous rehabs in a not such a nice way, and that were forever stuck in the back of my mind, and reflected to me how lucky I was that my wife had admitted me to Capri and not to another maybe court-mandated session somewhere. It just shows how different recovery programs can be. But before we go there, let's go a little bit further back. When you were a little girl, did you want to be an alcoholic? Hey,
it was my first thought. I used to take my dummy out and go, when I get older, this is what I want to do.
That's right. Can you dip that in some vodka, please? Yes, go on.
And that is just a crazy thing, how misunderstood this illness is one of the things I always say to people is, do you think you woke up, or do you think your son or daughter woke up when they were younger and said, well, when I grow up, I want to be a drug addict, and shoot up and, anyway, no, it's it is. It's just it's a misinterpretation of how we all end up as this is not what we wanted. This is not what we knew was coming. I suffered really, really bad anxiety issues in regards to, I didn't think I had anxiety. I just used to have panic attacks. I didn't know what anxiety really was. I knew that I was overloaded. I knew my brain, and physically and mentally I was overloaded with what I'd put and gathered in my life. But I didn't understand where suddenly these panic attacks were coming from, where as I couldn't, I would be in a supermarket, always a supermarket, and all of a sudden just feel like I was about to have a heart attack, physically feel that I was about to drop on the floor from a heart attack. And that was my only indication that there was something actually wrong with inside my mentality of my life.
How old were you when that sort of first time manifested?
Early 30s. Early 30s. So up to then, I wasn't a drinker. I drank, but I would only drink in weekend when we were going out, not even weekends. My first baby was born, carried him all the way through my 19th year, and he was born just after I turned 20, and I didn't touch a drop of alcohol. I got married in that time, didn't touch a drop of alcohol at my wedding. All through my early 20s, I started to socially drink, but only when people were with me. So it wasn't into my early 30s where I had piled a lot of stuff into my life that I thought I was coping with. Did I start to feel the effects of panic attacks? And did I find that a glass of wine actually stopped them? And it was as simple as that. A glass of wine, chuck back, scull a glass of wine, and I could breathe again. And everything was okay in the world. And that was simply how it happened for me. But what was actually underneath was a whole lot of other shit, that I didn't acknowledge or hadn't processed. And, that simple act for me personally led me to the door of death. It led me to lose everything, absolutely everything in my life, including my hair and my teeth. That was the last of it, but everything that mattered to me was gone by what I was doing back then, by just trying to make myself feel better.
And what you're saying is so true, isn't it? We all start drinking because it gives us something. It is not just, it's not the nicest stuff. It burns on the tongue. It is it's often an acquired taste. So you can't really tell me that, this fermented grape juice is really the nicest thing ever. No. It is something that fulfills a need. And it makes you feel different. And that's why we drink. And that's why the alcohol industry is so powerful, because they harness that feel-good factor. And it's, we are up against a huge, huge challenge there, because not only for a good alcoholic, our brain, our reptilian brain is so wanting that dopamine fix. And that dopamine fix, guys, trust me, when you're an alcoholic, that is overdeveloped. I'm a super responder, and so is Denise. We are so full of dopamine when we go to drink. It's beautiful, at least at the start. Later on, it's all so helter-skelter and crap in our neurotransmitters. You're no longer getting high. You're just about making it through the day. And I think that's such a different life. I mean,
when you talk about dopamine, I say that I think that should be talked about in schools. The dopamine, the motivation, memory, and reward systems in our brains that lead to send dopamine rushing, knowing that we're going to get something that's going to make us feel better. generally throughout all addiction, or all addiction, you know, whether it's food or shopping or sex or gambling or whatever, you know, the dopamine that's occurring within our brains, that neurotransmitter, is the key to what sends us back to keep doing what we're doing over and over again. You know, and they talk about it being, this is how, you know, mankind survives, is because of that memory, motivation, reward, dopamine system, you know.
So true. It is of highest importance. I could not agree more with you.
Yeah.
But we, of course, especially when you're an alcoholic or an addict, then you just love the instant gratification. You were saying you know, one drink down, or probably 2 free drinks when you measure an alcoholic's glass. We never have small glasses, I forget. So yes.
Would you like? Sorry, I just have to. I'm always big. This is my water bottle.
See, so, we are always overachievers, aren't we?
Always.
That's my coffee, okay? Yeah, exactly. See, it never stops. It never stops. Perfect. So that's us. That's us in a nutshell.
Yeah,
so I think
it is.
And we need to accept it. And we do, we too can laugh about it. But I'm sure that many people out there who are listening, because they might be still drinking, they cringe because we are holding them the mirror in front of their face, and they say, "Shit, yeah, that's right." You know, once you start going to different bottle shops in sequence to make sure it doesn't look so bad. Warning sign. Once you start in the middle of the night going with your bottles before recycling day, going to various others, neighbors, and dumping them in there to not make it so apparent that you're an empty wine bottle collector. Then warning sign.
I know, it's all those little things that you know, I remember in the end there, and you know, you say it now with humor, because you really, if you can't laugh at stuff, you know, you've got a bit of an issue. But I used to go to different supermarkets, but I had to go first thing in the morning, and because, you know, I needed my supplies, because the 6 bottles I got the day before were gone. And so I would go in, and I still had the thought process of, I can't let the people in the supermarket know what I'm doing. So I would buy bacon and eggs, or a roast, because that's something you put on for the day, or a corned beef, because corned beef you boil throughout the day. And I would slap the newspaper and the bacon and eggs and this roast down on the counter with 6 bottles of wine, saying, "Oh, dinner party tonight, blah, blah, blah." I would, you know, literally leave the supermarket. I'd normally go to the toilets first to scull half a bottle of wine, so I could actually get in the taxi to get back to the house. But I would dump all the food. I would dump all the food in a rubbish bin, because all I wanted was the wine. But I didn't want the person in the supermarket to know what I was doing. I mean, it's like, you know, these days you get it delivered. It's a whole different story, but
true.
Crazy.
True.
You're still trying to keep your perseverance, you know, your perseverance, trying to keep your dignity. Still always trying to keep your dignity intact.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Bloody awful.
Exactly. But it takes energy, and so much energy. And really the hiding of it all. You're hiding that you're hungover in the morning. You're then hiding that you're buying the drink. You're hiding that you're drinking. You're hiding that you're drunk. You're hiding the evidence thereafter. And it is so bizarre. This is such an all-encompassing life, where 80-90% of your day you're involved with your drugs or your drinking or your addiction. Bloody hell, it's exhausting. I can't actually imagine how I did it. It was, with hindsight, it sends shivers down my brain, because it's such a wasted life. Now I can say that. Then I was in the middle of it, and there was no way. Mind you, there were such bad days when I was so hungover that I was still sick, physically sick in the evening. And when was days when I knew I was not at work, so I let rip. And then I was so hungover that I said, no, that's it. Today, last day. That's it. Never I will drink again. And then I actually went to bed, and surprise, surprise, I actually slept not too bad, because finally my body had no alcohol in, and it was not yet in any kind of mild withdrawal or so. And so the next morning I wake up, hey, I actually feel good. See, I did it. I did it. My first day of sobriety. 8 hours later, the latest, I would be hitting the supermarket after work and buying some more drink. Hey, because you need to celebrate. You need to celebrate that day.
I mean, also that's what we tell ourselves. But as we both know, what is actually happening is your brain is actually working on a whole different level altogether. Your subconscious and your conscious minds are two completely different things, and it's actually telling you, hey, you need to feel better. Only a day or so ago, I was feeling really good. So memory, reward, motivation are all telling they're all working together and sending you back to the bottle store. It's not an excuse. It's the science behind it. You just can't, no matter how hard you think you're not going to do it today, for some reason you go and do it. And this is why you do. But yeah, like you said, when you're caught in the throes of it, Stefan, it's a whole different ball game, because you just, as much as you desperately want to get out of this, without intervention and connection and help available to you, your chances of getting out of it are incredibly slim.
Yet, if you had the right intervention and the right buy-in, if someone can convince you that you're now on the right path and you actually start taking the right steps yourself, I would say 80, 90% chance that you can expect to get better. So these are the two extremes that we are dealing with, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you are the living example, because you spend 3/4 of a year in rehab, in one rehab facility, where it was, well, officially forbidden to drink, but you guys got nicely around that at times. So tell us a bit about that, because you would think, I'm going one step further. A while back on Quora, someone asked a question with regards to an expectation of, can you get better? Is there actually, what's your chance? And another question from another Quora member was, why do people still go to AA when it is such a proven failing thing? And I thought, hang on, no, I need to answer that. And as I discussed a bit the ideal rehab and those kind of things, but we need to look at that here with you, and you're the right person to ask. So tell us a bit about your previous rehab experiences.
The first one I went to it was well organised. It's just that I didn't want to be there. I didn't think I had a problem. So I was kind of pushed into going. I agreed to it and thought maybe this is it. Maybe this will be their way out for me. I was still married, and the relationship was still semi together. But we had other issues on the outside of my drinking. But however, so it was a government-run CADS program, and it was run by a trust called Unique in the Lower Hutt area. And it was amazing. My doctor, who actually had moved to Wellington, so I kind of, was able to continue seeing him after we both left Queenstown. He arranged it for me, and I had this, all of a sudden I was going into this house that was 5, 6 other people, a 24-hour staff, and every second or third day we were going to an outpatients program with CADS, Community Alcohol and Drug Services. And, in the program, I can't put any of it down. It was 9 weeks, and, it was outings in the weekend. It was a beautiful home. We all cooked, we collectively cooked, and I had a break from my life. And the program at CADS, once again, taught you about what addiction was and how you got there. Didn't talk about mental health. It just talked about addiction. So It was all good for me learning what addiction was, what drugs and alcohol did for me. But that was just talking about the Band-Aid. It wasn't talking about the wound, which I later understood where real recovery starts, is revealing your traumas and your wounds and processing those, letting those little fuckers go. So that was my first rehab. I was only 2 weeks out of that before I started drinking again, because really the anxiety attacks and everything had, even though they'd subsided, hadn't gone altogether. And I just knew that I would feel better if I drank again. My second one was under the Drug and Alcohol Act of 1966. And my parents and a couple of my girlfriends had been advised that this was what they needed to do for me. It was a number of years later, 2011 and 2012. And so I was placed under the Act. I stood up in court not knowing what I was doing in front of a judge, and all I had to say was yes to whatever was going to happen to me, which I didn't know what that was. And the next minute I was in a detox centre and then in a rehab, which was just a holding cell for the dregs of alcoholism and drug addicts in New Zealand. Dregs of alcoholics. Horrendous place. And I write very detailed about it in my book, because it's not to harm them, I say, it's to expose them. That I needed to expose these treatment centres that don't exist, actually do exist within New Zealand. So I ended up there for nearly a year, over a year actually. That was horrendous. So I went to Capri, a number of years later. I suppose where I gained my knowledge from is not just my own personal experiences, but it's the experiences of a lot of my clients that I deal with. But I saw it from the inside. I saw rehabs on different levels from the inside. So I know what works and what doesn't.
And I remember you describing it, that you were the expert pepper picker, and that you were basically farm slave labor. Just when you described it to me, then I immediately thought back at the forced labor situation in Nazi Germany, where the French were just dragged onto the fields in Germany to harvest, and it sounded a bit like that. In all fairness, you had once a week, when you were lucky, you had a bit of a 2-hour input. And the rest of the week, and when with input I mean a pseudo class or a pseudo support thing, and the rest of the time you were essentially out there on the fields and making money, whilst the owner of the business were paid money from the government. So an interesting financial setup, I must say.
Very. It's run under the Nova Trust, and so there's a huge horticultural system running there, whereas there is massive glass houses, tunnel houses that have grow peppers, capsicums, and cucumbers and baby beet out in the field. And so what we did is, they advertise it as a market garden that you come and work in. And I thought, oh, how wonderful, you're going to go and work in market gardens. They put you on the benefit, then they take your money. They take that money from the benefit and they give you $40. That's it. Then they get paid by the government, and then you go and work the tunnel houses and the market gardens, but you also do all the cooking and the cleaning. So, and in return, you get an AA meeting, which is in-house. It's in-house, so there's 60 other inmates in there with you, all looking at each other thinking, well, I'm not about to fucking open up and tell you anything, so I live with you. And then you get a person who is first or second year AOD student taking a class for 15 minutes out of a textbook that nobody's listening to. And then you get once a week, once every couple of weeks, a counsellor who's actually not qualified asking you what your problems are. Well, and you can't leave. You actually can't leave. You're locked in there. You're under an act. And I looked at me and I thought, and everybody else that was in there with me, I'm just a fucking lover of fine wines. That's all I've done. I haven't bloody killed somebody or broken the law in any way. I just like to drink because it makes me feel better. And here I am in 82 acres right across the road from the women's and men's prisons in Christchurch. And you know, it was just, I was in my early 40s and I'm just like, holy shit, what's happened to me? What the hell has, but I think the worst part about it is you were treated like you were nothing. You were treated like you were bad. You weren't a person. You had no rights. You know, I write about the morning I went to work, you know, got up, I was in the kitchen by this stage and I'd been working in the kitchen for probably a couple of months because they figured out I was a good cook. I raised, you know, 5 kids, so I could cook well. I went to work and the chef wasn't there, the main cook. She was pretty much the only paid person in the kitchen. And so I went to go down and get the keys from the office to open up the fridges and said, you know, she hasn't turned up for work. And they said, oh, no, we just got a phone call. She died last night. But can you take care of the kitchen for the day? And that was it. That was it. And the woman I've been working beside for the last few months, you know, she's in her mid-30s and died in her sleep. We asked a few days later if we could go to a funeral. No. You're not allowed to.
Whoa.
Why? Because I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, disgusting. And you know, it was, even though it was, you know, a private organisation, it was government funded. And it literally, out of all of the girls that I were, and males, but the girls that were in my wing for that period of time, there's only about 20% of them survived. The rest of them are all dead now. No word of a lie.
Now, the reason I'm asking that all is, or I'm letting you talk about that, is not to destroy someone's reputation or to be mean, but it is so important because when you're down and out, you are not choosing, you're not doing due diligence in researching your rehab centers. You are essentially grasping any straw. And if someone says, there's a rehab center, that's where I want you to go, then you say, okay, hopefully you say yes. Now, in my case, that was exactly the case. I had no idea where I would go. Capri didn't mean a thing to me. I didn't know anything about it until I learned by being there. And it turns out that I was in a top-notch facility that saved my life. But it could have been different. I could have been on your work farm, and then maybe I would be dead now. And that is so sad. So it's the roll of the dice. There are many, many very passionate people out there who do beautiful, beautiful work and helping us addicts. But at the same token, there are charlatans and moneymakers and pieces of shit out there that can make the chance of your a positive recovery disappear. Because what was the first thing you did when you came out of your rehab there?
Oh, well, the first thing I did was I drank, so I can't remember anything after that.
exactly my point. You know, no surprise.
You know, both times. You know, it's the stories in my book, but I did escape there. I did escape, and I ran for a month, 5 weeks, and I was tracked by the police for that period of time. So I wrote about that because I think it's something, you know, that I felt that, you know, had to be kind of highlighted that this is how you can get caught in shit situations when all you're really wanting and all your family ever wanted was to find you the best possible hope for help, you know, that they were being advised this would be a place that I was going to get help. And instead it was a place that I lost my soul. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, all of that had a lot to do with where I went on to in life after Capri. But choosing the right place is so important. Sadly for us here in New Zealand, choosing any place, you know, to get into a place, full stop, is scarce.
Yet, and no. I thought it was scarce because when I sort of talked and listened around, there don't appear to be many places around. Yet, if you actually put into Google or into Google Maps somewhere addiction services, etc., you get 240 pings in New Zealand. So you think, hang on, what's going on here? So there are a lot of people out there who are just flying underneath the radar, and I cannot comment whatsoever on their qualifications or on their capabilities, of their setups, etc. I think that what we have heard here from you is the extreme version over there, the slave labor camp.
Yeah.
I think now we owe it to Guy Smith and his team at Capri Hospital, which regrettably is no longer in existence in the way it was then, about the beautiful setup that they have created and that they did. So I start off with that because I put it into my book. I've written my steps to sobriety, and in that I tell my story and many vignettes from that. But I've also written about my arrival in Capri on that in another book called From Breakdown to Wake Up, where we have got 16 authors. We all share our transformations. And in there, I described me being driven up by my wife to Auckland, to Capri. And that was in its own right weird because here I was, always the breadwinner. I ran a large pain clinic. I traveled tens of thousands of miles, kilometers, to go to large towns in the North Island to run the pain clinics. So I was always in the driver's seat. And it was such a good analog, such a good picture that I was now in the passenger seat. My wife was driving me to the rehab. And then we arrived there, and it was in the middle of a suburbia, and it was the end of a cul-de-sac, and you sort of think, what the fuck, where am I going here? And you walk in, there's sort of an entranceway with sort of plants left and right, and suddenly there was this weird voice there, and once I was hooked, now I am free. And you think, what? And there was this wooden alligator there, and the wooden alligator in his open mouth had this kind of speaker in there, and it was triggered every time you walk in, and it was basically there was a weird thing. It was a pun on hooked. Now I'm free, and it's basically Captain Hook and the Peter Pan story, but it was this kind of what the fuck am I going into here? And then you walk in as a little courtyard and you walk into this big glass-covered hall. And there's this massive jacuzzi in the middle with 4 big golden lions around squirting water. And again, you think, what the fuck? And it was one impression after the other, but it was such a crazy start. I guess it reflected my crazy life. It was, I actually said, yeah, okay, so what? Okay, they're lions, so what? But then we two sat there and trying to spend the time whilst we were being processed. And I remember us sort of discussing liver function tests, and you sort of said, well, what's your number? Oh, that's come on, that's rookie numbers. I've got it. All that kind of shit. You think, my God. So that was my first day. And what happens is all quite bizarre. You try to keep your dignity, and then the nurses say, let me take your luggage for you. And that translates not into them bringing it into the room. They basically then frisk you. They frisk your luggage and looking for drugs, for alcohol, because we addicts try to sneak stuff in. So I hadn't, but many others have. That was bizarre. So slowly but surely, people were beginning to strip away the masks from me. and from you. So that was my first impressions of Capri. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to run a mile or if I thought, hey, I'm there or what. So you keep going from there. What were then sort of the next highlights? Where was Capri different to other places for you?
They looked at me as a person. That instantly was the first time that I felt that I'm not, there were certainly people along the way in other treatment centres that I've been to that treated me as Denise, as somebody who was, somebody who more of, what broke, not what are you doing, but what broke to get you here. And that was instantly the impression I got from Capri, was the fact that whoever was running this joint knew their shit, because they were fully immersed in the treatment of mental health underlying issues, rather than actually the addiction or the substance that you were using. Instead, it was all about finding out how it went wrong, all those beginning stages of what made you do this to begin with. And it was the first time I'd come across that. And by now we're talking about 10 years of different, because I've been to a lot of outpatient things as well before, rather than, as well as inpatient. It was the first time somebody looked behind the person who was standing there, figuratively speaking, with a glass of wine and a bottle in their hand, turned around and looked behind that and said, hey, Denise, what happened?
Exactly.
Whatever's happened, let's try and uncover a bit of this. And
exactly.
Let's try and find a way for you not to need to go back to it.
But it was a very systematic approach. You came in and they did all the safety, the security, and made sure that you didn't bring anything in. Then I had a very in-depth consultation with a doctor who was looking at me from a medical point of view, and who was making sure that I'm safe. There was always the issue of the detox initially, and the question is, will I go into a withdrawal? How will I be managed, etc. And they did that very well. They kept my dignity in place, which I found beautiful. So this woman, the doctor there, she managed to tread that fine line between treating me as a colleague, yet treating me as a patient. And she did that exceptionally well. So that was a great start. And then, as you say, then suddenly they started peeling away the masks that we were working so hard to keep up. But parallel to that, from the word go, they were modeling a new life. So it was not just focus on the shit, but actually it was from the word go. It's now 12 o'clock. We drop everything. We come together. We do a little chant and do maybe the serenity prayer. And then it says bon appetit. And then you go in there and you have lunch. Like it or lump it, it's 12 o'clock. You have the habit of having lunch. And the lunch was superb, because we had our chef there in Capri, and she was doing such beautiful, healthy food, because that was clear. I mean, we alcoholics, you were saying you lost your hair, you lost your teeth, all those kind of things from malnutrition. From the word go, in Capri, we had the best food possible, and there were no limitations. There was, you eat what you want, you go for it. How beautiful was that? So therefore, it was this modeling behavior that stood out to me. From the word go, you had to take part in activities which were designed to show you a different life. And they did so very well. So that blew me away, the nutrition. Yay. What other things?
They had everything. They definitely had everything that gave you a foundation. Good food, good nutrition, exercise, being able to walk around the basin, good sleep patterns, just even, having melatonin every night to help you sleep. The nurses, but I think, that was the foundation physically, but mentally it was the people who I've met many like that since. It was people who passionately understood and cared for the person that, that was broken, the fragmentation of the person that was standing in front of them. You could see that, I remember one girl told a story to a very young girl. She was a nurse. She told a story to a very young girl who was still struggling a couple of weeks after she came in. And this girl was struggling with the fact that she didn't feel any hope. And so this nurse, gave her this talk and said, what we do when we first meet you? Inside us, we carry a very bright, bright torch. And that torch is called hope. And we carry that for you until we know that you'll start to be able to carry it for yourself. And that's what we do here. We're carrying a torch for you. We know you're going to get better. You've just got to believe it. And eventually that hope will come to you as well. And, and that was the compassionate understanding of all elements that makes up a person who has been so broken through underlying issues that led them to, self-medicate on a substance. And, there are places in New Zealand like that are still, still running like that. Capri Hospital, Capri Sanctuary opened up, and, there are definitely, I only comment on places that I know about. I don't comment on places that I don't.
Same here. And I think what is good in such a place. Capri was outstanding because after a while I realized that virtually everyone who was helping me had been an addict themselves.
Yeah.
They all had their own stories. They all had been there. It didn't matter if it was the yoga instructor who was teaching us yoga in the afternoon, or the nurses that were looking after us, or you name it, the caseworkers. They were all addicts, and they were all living a different life now. They modeled to us that. And Guy Smith, he is such an outstanding man. I remember him second Saturday, he said, look, Stefan, we two go for a coffee. I want you to meet someone. And I thought, okay. And that was bizarre. And so, okay, he took me into his flash car. We were driving to a cafe somewhere in another suburb of Auckland. And in that cafe, I met a colleague. And that colleague I had known from the pain field. We were both, we knew each other very well. And there was a certain, my peer kind of a thing. We were both respecting each other. But I was gobsmacked when I heard his history and his background. And then Guy just said, hey, come on, I'll let you be here for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. I pick you back up. Then he fucked off. And there I was. And it was such a beautiful thing. It was for me the realization that I'm not alone, that I'm not alone, that there are many others like me, doctors, and for you guys out there, it's the same message. Whatever you think, however unique you think you are in your suffering and in your shame and in your guilt, a good place like Capri will show you that you're not alone, that it's actually quite normal out there, that 1 in 3 people suffer from chemical addiction. And that despite of the fact that 95% of us addicts want to pretend that there's nothing wrong with us. We strongly believe that there's nothing wrong with us. Those 5% who actually get their shit together and are beginning to accept what is happening and get the right help, we go to such wonderful places. It's amazing. And that Saturday, I saw that. I saw that for the first time, and I had hope. The hope that was really what I had been missing. And now here I was suddenly coming home from that coffee meeting and saying, wow, okay, there's shitloads of work to be done, but there is hope. And that was a beautiful revelation that I had there and then. And maybe that was one of the breaking moments for me, that I actually then really started buying into the possibility that there is a life out there, a successful life, both for me as a doctor, as a man, etc. And now I prove here, sitting here doing this interview with you today, I prove that recovery is not only possible, is it can be expected with the right inputs.
Mm.
So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So we both spent 28 days in this beautiful bubble of Capri, because that was what it was. It was heaven on earth, and we were both treated like human beings. We both got through our detox. We started clearing up our heads. Suddenly started to see little things changing in us, and there we were 28 days later, graduating on a nice Wednesday evening, when there is typically a meeting where relatives can come in if they live in Auckland, and it's a graduation ceremony, and it was just beautiful. It was an achievement. Got goosebumps just thinking about that. Actually, this was a lovely celebration, and again, it showed that Capri was not just looking at addiction, it was looking at mental health, but then it was looking and providing for the relatives, for the loved ones out there. That is what every rehab should be, or should at least strive to be. Sometimes there are restraints, and you can't do all the bells and whistles, but that is, I hope you can see by the passion in my eyes that this is what works. This is what is great. And all those colleagues out there who are providing such services, my heart goes out to you, because you guys are my heroes. You guys are literally saving lives. You might save more lives than many doctors do in their lifetime. And then, I take my hat off to those people out there, and those people who maybe are involved in treatment services and doing, maybe starting out and thinking they're doing the right job. Maybe take heart to what we are saying and say, wow, actually they're right. Maybe we can add on services or add on certain aspects to the care that we deliver to our addicts to make it a little bit more likely for them to succeed. No, it's beautiful. And then at some stage, you actually come to a point where suddenly you are a bit more outspoken and you're actually starting to give back. When did that start happening with you?
I spent 14 months, the first 14 months going, and like you, I did that 28 days, and then my clinician, Brent, suggested to me that it wasn't wise that I head home. So I ended up staying in Auckland. With his help, I got a place to stay with a couple that I really got on with, and stayed in Auckland for what I thought the next 6 months, a year. And I daily went to outpatient programs. So I daily had connection with Capri. And that was a big part of my being able to maintain my sobriety in the early days, where strength may have been a great thing, but, I was actually needing more really good support and connection. At about the 14-month mark, I decided that, I was obviously clearly staying in Auckland, that I'd start looking for work. And I just happened to mention it to Dale, who was the CEO, Guy's son, that I had a job interview the next day. And that night I went home, and he phoned me and offered me a job. And so, long story short, I was employed by Capri. And so I then went on to the other side of things, and gratefully had a lot of training, was able to do a lot of courses, listen to how the other side of this worked, and then use my own individual personality to do what was done for me, and that was to give people hope and give people courage that, this is a place for you. It worked for me. It can work for you if you want it hard enough, if you want it bad enough. And that's what I did for the next two and a bit years, until Capri Hospital closed. I worked for them and loved it. I think I probably would have, I have a feeling I probably would have stayed there for a very long time doing what I was doing, because they gave me free rein. They knew that I had good communication skills from my old life, and I was able to say exactly what I wanted on the phones. People will be saying to me, "Oh, it's, I don't know if I'm ready," and it's okay. Call me when you are. Hey, listen, you might have a million excuses in your book. Don't we all? When you stop with those excuses, give me a call again. We might talk some more. I just didn't take shit,
Yeah.
and I think by that, look, I know where you're coming from. I know what you're saying, but this just at the end of the day, is this making you feel any better? Are you getting the help that you need? I believed in what I was doing, so I was able to do it, and I was able to do a good job and do it well. And so that was the next couple of years of my life until Capri, the bomb dropped really, and we were given 6 weeks notice that we were closing. And it was their decision. And much respect to them in regards to that. They decided that the time had come for them to retire, and they'd done 17 years of this. So then I was in a position of like, okay, what next?
Indeed, it was such a shame that Capri had to close. But at the same token, I very much understand Guy. There is a natural order to things. And as you say, 17 years is a long time to run such a rehab hospital. And it's nice to see nowadays that that the phoenix has died, but a new phoenix, a little phoenix, has arisen from the ashes. Brent, Guy's son, has established a smaller version of that in a beautiful countryside of outside of Auckland. It's Capri Respite, isn't it?
Capri Sanctuary.
Sanctuary,
Capri
thank
Sanctuary.
you.
Yeah,
Capri Sanctuary. So, and indeed, four places there at the moment. And again, similar to what you had described and how Capri was a bit. It's basically a house where people are living together and are learning to live a new life whilst they're getting the expert input. So it's beautiful to see that a new version of it is coming up and is there to help people. So it's beautiful. But here you were, it was your old life had finished, the real old life. You had started to build this new life, and then suddenly there was the stumbling stone. Oh, by the way, no more job. So how did that continue then? So how did you reinvent yourself?
Yeah, so I think the passion was there to carry on doing what I was doing, and that was through my own experience and knowledge of addiction. Although we're all individual, how we arrive at that door, we're all very much the same once we've arrived there, and we're all needing help and professionalism and connection to get us to the other side, to where we want to head towards. I always say, it's heading towards a life that you were truly destined to have. So I decided, well, I can do this. Just how do I do it? So I set up a company that I called Seeking Solace, and I started by just one person at a time, getting the individual, understanding what they needed to meet to meet their needs and getting the right treatment for their underlying issues and things like that. And I sought out different treatment centres overseas. Firstly, Melbourne. I flew to Melbourne and went and sat in this treatment centre in this rehab for a week. After actually going through a number of other treatment centres and sort of dismissing them. All because I wanted to find the same programs that were running very similar to Capri's. The same program that helped get me well. I wanted to find those other programs, hence why I went overseas to find them. Evidence-based programs that offered a really good foundation for getting you through your underlying issues. It's acknowledging your addiction, but getting you through the underlying issues. So good clinicians, good professional therapists and clinicians. I found that in Melbourne, and within a week, I had my first client. She was a policewoman who'd heard about me, and I never looked back. I've worked on my own now for 4.5 years. After Melbourne, they also opened a sister clinic in the Gold Coast, so I started taking people there. I look into the individual. I look into what their needs are. I look into the clinicians and the clinics that have good therapy. I look into the cost, and I look into where the family connection can be very much involved with it as well. So I call myself a navigator. I navigate people from where they are to where they want to go. And I include all the families in the navigation. I literally, if somebody comes to me and says, oh, I need help, I'm ready, I go, well, let's go. I send them the full details of what clinic I'm using at the moment. And literally within days, I'm on a plane with them. And in the last number of years, that's been to Thailand. There's been very good Western operated clinics over there that have really good programs running, very good team of clinicians from around the world.
Nice.
And money-wise, it's really affordable compared to a lot of private facilities.
Yeah. Can you give us an idea of what, let's say, 4 weeks in Thailand at one of the facilities would cost?
So for 5 weeks, which was their minimum, 5 weeks, I feel like I'm handing you something, I'm about to take it back because all these places are closed at the moment.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Yeah. But for 5 weeks, airfares, insurance, me taking you there, involving all the families throughout the process and then bringing you home, and then a year's aftercare was $19,000.
That's nothing. That's nothing.
No.
If you think about it, that would be your bill for alcohol for a year. That's it. Okay.
It would also be around about the cost of your funeral.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you go. You can choose alcohol or funeral or actually investment in your life and getting on with it. But you pay the same. Your choice where you go.
Yeah.
So you try. You're absolutely right. I always keep saying the 27,000 that we have paid for my month there was the best investment I've ever done into my life. So it costs you to get better, but it also costs you to have a funeral, and it costs you to have to keep drinking, or using all that. So cool. Yeah. But you're right, of course, right now is COVID. Right now is the world has changed in 2020. And irreversibly, there will be a new life coming out. How that will be is difficult to say. So having said that, whilst there are not the places overseas now, there is still the hope there, because you are a merchant or navigator of hope. That's how we should call you, the navigator of hope, because you can bring people together, you bring networks together to actually tailor make a solution for your client or your patient. And that is such a unique thing, because you have seen the bad things. You know how to assess the good things. That's where your story is so strong, because you haven't just read about it, have you? You lived it. You been there, done that, vomited on the T-shirt. Okay, so yes,
that's the way to put it. Yeah.
So now, please.
Yeah, that I think is, I don't do what I do for the financial gain, because there isn't a lot in that. I just can't. I mean, I write about 3 or 4. I write about a number of people in my book because they gave me permission to write these stories. But I cannot put into words what it feels like to see a person who has been so broken, and the family and the children of that family be so broken, come to me, trust me, and let me guide them to a place that's going to help them, and let me bring them home and stay in their lives forever after. I can't put into words what that actually feels. And so, although I'll never be rich by what I do, I live such an unbelievably fulfilled life because I'm able to show other people how to get life back again, and all of these people that I've worked with over the years, I remain in touch with every single one of them. I know their life stories, I know where their life was, I know where their life's gone, and it's an unbelievable feeling to be able to, out of the ashes of what was my history of alcoholism and addiction and my underlying issues, that I can individually help change somebody else's life and into where they want to be going to the person they want to be. So yeah, it's a wonderful job. It's I operate under my own steam, so I can say exactly what I want when I want to, with with always that person's well-being in mind. But I've got somebody coming up with a mile of excuses why they can't do it. I'm just very upfront and no holes barred, and that seems to work for people. I just don't take bullshit. I know the excuses. I've written a book about the excuses. I literally have.
You can't bullshit a bullshitter.
That's it.
And that's our strength. And that was the strength of Capri, because these were people who had been there, who had heard it all, because they had said it all.
Yeah. You just I think it's because you can be so real about it. But yeah, what a lucky person I am that been able to have created this company for myself and work it. So hence I've been spending a lot of time in Thailand over the last number of years.
Beautiful. And again, there is this kind of bubble that you're creating. There's this kind of all-encompassing, taking you out of your not so nice life, putting you into a setting that is very different, and allowing you to heal, and allowing you to develop that glimmer of hope. And there are far worse settings than Thailand where you can do that. But I don't care if it is Alaska or Antarctica where you put me. If you can transplant that glimmer of hope into my soul, I would take it. And
that's right.
It is whatever needs to happen. But as an addict, you don't know what needs to happen. So therefore, if you guys feel that you're willing to make a change, and Denise reverberates with you and she resonates with you, then guys, get in touch with her. Denise, what are the best ways of getting in touch with you?
Well, through my email, Denise at seekingsolace.co.nz. I do have to say, at the moment, due to COVID, I've had to pause. 2020 has changed a lot of things, and I feel, hence actually probably the reason for the book. It's a long story, I won't go into it, but I was back in New Zealand very briefly when the COVID bells started ringing here. They'd already, had a big bang happening over where I was, Southeast Asia, but I cut my trip home short and jumped on a plane and only just got back into Thailand. And remained there because I had two clients in treatment at the time. The treatment centre closed and I pulled them out and created a mini treatment centre in lockdown in my home in Thailand. And those two remained with me for about 6 months. So
bloody hell.
Yeah, I just brought the therapist in, because all of a sudden everyone's out of work. The therapist and the yoga, instructor and massage, and an amazing clinical practitioner, Dr. Jones, who I've been working with the last 3 years. He then came in on Zoom meetings for my clients, every second day. And so we created our own little mini rehab.
Brilliant.
After we finally got one of the clients home to New Zealand 7 months later, there is actually nothing I could do to help people anymore. I'm for the first time in my life caught in a position that I can advise people, but I can't travel anybody anywhere in the world. And hence we've got a problem back here in New Zealand where, the Capri Sanctuary, for instance, I mean, the yes are available, which I highly recommend. But I don't know enough about any of the other rehabs. They're popping up all the time. So I haven't looked into them. But as far as public is concerned, we've got a 6 to 8 month waiting list to go to places with a chance of 3% success rate.
Correct.
Yeah. So for now, for 2021, I'm actually stepping back from my role as a navigator. My company's never going to stop. As soon as borders open up again, I'm already in the process of talking to clinics that are going to restart. 2021, though, is on hold until we can travel.
As so much in this world is. But then again, this is a blessing in disguise, because here you feel your passion inside yourself, and this passion wants to come out. So suddenly your brain comes up with new ideas of collaboration with others, like, for example, writing your book, like you coming onto my show, all these kind of things. So we are creating, out of necessity, networks that have never been in existence before.
Yeah,
so therefore this is so beautiful. So let's make this happen. Let's go out there. Let's change lives. Let's actually be the merchants of hope to those people that need to hear it. And this world bloody well needs to hear that there is hope. Okay, so now that is not the last time that we've heard from you, Denise, and that is not the last time that two of us have collaborated. Denise, I'm so grateful for you coming onto my show today. This was a beautiful to celebrate you and to celebrate your achievements, because your story is so beautiful, and it shows such a transformation from death's door to nowadays being this ball of energy helping others. I'm so pleased for you, and you guys out there, if Muppets like Denise and me can get our shit together, then come on, there is hope for you. Honestly, trust me, there is hope. Okay.
There is hope. There's always hope.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Denise, thank you so much.
And thank you, Stefan.
An absolute pleasure. And you guys out there, look after yourself. Bye.
Bye.